Does anybody have a sense of the feeling? Please, Mr. Bassi.
See, the Bar Council draft rules,
Yeah.
I think as they are framed, is one of the most atrocious pieces of, drafting that I have come across. And if those draft rules have to be implemented,
Please.
then there is nothing but a disaster. Because there is no clarity, they have not applied their mind. We don't know who is the author, who has drafted those. There is no committee. There has been no consultation with the stakeholders. Who are the stakeholders? That is basically the legal profession. Bar Council of India does not represent the legal profession. It's the regulatory body. It is a licensing authority which gives licenses to lawyers to practice law. It is not representative. Representatives are the bar associations all over India. Representatives are like organizations like the Society of Indian Law Firms who represent the interest of the law firm. They have suddenly come up with these draft rules. And you are saying amendment. I think so many amendments would be required if these draft rules become the actual rules and they pass the stage of draft. Because they say law firms can be registered. Now, Advocates Act doesn't talk about any law firms. Even Indian law firms are not registered. It is only the Indian lawyers individually who are registered as advocates under the Advocates Act.
Sorry, can I just follow up quickly with that? So does that mean if those draft rules are implemented, you anticipate an immediate challenge in court to them?
Immediate, these are counterproductive. You see, I don't see any issue, and I think we have slightly digressed it from the main issue as to what should be the timeline for introducing the so-called legal reforms. I don't see reciprocity and all as major issues. Reciprocity is inherent, it is implicit. We will definitely say, okay, if we allow someone from UK to come, then we should also have the corresponding rights. I think those procedural matters could be taken care of. What we are emphasizing time and again is, with which you see at least the government of India through the Ministry of Commerce, they agreed that there should be a phased entry. Now what is phase 1? Phase 1, as we said, is like a precondition to phase 2. Phase 2 is the condition where you see they are allowed to come and practice their law in India. But phase 1 has been totally discarded in the Bar Council of India's draft rules. And I'll just try to just read out to you, this is a part of the official report that we are submitting as to what phase 1 is.
Please.
Because Pratibha spoke about protectionism and all that. Now there's no question of any protectionism. We are not here to protect our turf. You see, we are not even talking about a level playing field, but we are saying that give us justice before you allow, you see, this grave injustice to happen. That straight away, as if, if India got independence in 1947, you make a demand, open up your economy. But that would not help. We are at a stage, you see, at an nascent stage. In 1901, our economy opened up. There were so many law firms which came up all over India that saw a sudden spurt, you see. We have so much of talent here available in India. And I again reiterate that we are second to none, despite, you see, what my friend Mr. Devaya may say. I think in our offices, in our staff, in our lawyers, we have the best talent available, including speaking English and even writing English and even writing emails and all that. We are, I think, very good at that. Now, the phase 1 is what we have been deprived of so far. Regulatory and administrative reform, recognition and removal of difficulties for practice in the LLP format. Bar Council of India clarification that practice of law in LLP is permissible so long as all partners are advocate, request pending since 2010. Income tax clarification, request made to CBDT in 2010. that is conversion of partnership firm to a LLP, is not a taxable event. Then changes, entry and exit of partners post conversion permitted, and change in assets and liability post conversion these should be permitted. Then recognition and registration of law firms by BCI. Even in India, you see, they are not registering, but foreign law firms they will register. And BCI rules to be amended to permit firm brochures, firm websites without restrictions placed on the content by BCI, directory listings, sponsorship of events, other means of market development, which Mr. Sudhanshu Pandey spoke about, market development, and information dissemination, firm information including credential presentation, participation in bid out tenders for legal services, seizing of all surrogate practice of Indian law in India by foreign law firms through various devices and structures, which is happening, which is rampant throughout. And then, causing of practice of Indian law outside India by foreign lawyers and foreign firms. Websites of several leading foreign firms unabashedly claim India practice conducted through overseas offices. Ability of Indian law firm to engage foreign lawyers and so many other things. This is phase one. Now, if we are serious about what we, when we can bring in the phase two, it will not take even a month. Government of India has nothing to do with that. Government of India is fully supportive. It is only the Bar Council of India which has to take all these decisions. So why can't they just meet once and take all these decisions?
Okay.
It won't take a month, and we straight away go to phase two then.
So
That is the timeline.
Thank you. Anil, did you want to say, please? Please.
Just wanted to, add, it's really not at all about protectionism. I think it's really about being prudent in terms of having systems in place. It's not about closing doors. In fact, there's just so many dimensions to this debate. In fact, Ambassador Verma's intervention in the first part of the session was really, his focus was all about just removal of citizenship and then allowing foreign lawyers to qualify according to your own laws, okay? Which is different from what what the panel discussion is all about in terms of opening up the legal sector and having law firms coming in, etc. The other point I want to really, really emphasize is that we are really not alone in the nature of complexities of domestic regulations and qualification requirements, etc. Practically every country in the world has complex domestic regulatory mechanism for any professional sector, whether it is medical, accountancy, legal, name it, you have it. It's not a question of opening up a sector and then foreigners coming in and competing on same terms. There are very strict domestic regulatory requirements that are in place. So having them is nothing unusual, having that is nothing protectionist. It's just a question of being prudent and then also assessing what is required, whether it should be limited to foreign law and international law practice alone. At what point of time can a foreign lawyer qualify under Indian law by removal of the citizenship requirement? There are just different dimensions to it. I don't think there can be any easy answers, nor can it be brushed away by saying that, oh, Indian market is being protectionist.
Thank you. Pratibha, did you want to?
So, just to clarify,
please,
when you say protectionism, and which is, a term you didn't use but implied, there is nothing wrong in protectionism. Let's be very clear about it, right? Every country has done it. We continue to do it in different industries, right? Last night there was clarification for financial services. It's been opened up a little more, but for years we've had protectionism for our financial services industries because we wanted our banks to have that benefit and have some time for having that level playing field before we let the global forces come in. The whole question of Indian economy being liberalized is we had a protectionist policy before that, and then we liberalized. So I don't want to go into semantics here, right? Like this is a small closed-door community here. So, to me, the issue more is what is that time frame, right? Because from where I see it, because I had those various hats, I've had the benefit of working in global firms where it's really helped me understand what globalization means, what service to big global firms means. So I cannot today, I'm sitting very pretty in a domestic Indian, one of the leading Indian firms, and I'm actually benefiting from this being a closed economy. But I will be doing injustice to the benefits that I have received and not providing that benefits to the next generation in a more open manner than I did. Having said that, I understand all the issues that are being raised, and the right people are involved in figuring out how do we do this in a phased manner, including our founding partner Nishit. And I completely agree with all that debate. All I'm saying is, at some point of time, we as lawyers need to figure out, are we in the interest of protecting what we are trying to build, the institutions we are trying to build, affecting the Indian economy? Are we affecting, because if you talk to clients, they will tell you not having their trusted legal advisors. They're used to, so I'm not just talking about the Indian clients, but if you have a Google or an Amazon who's used to a global firm providing services across countries, not having the benefit of the same service here, right? Does that inhibit growth in India? So it's related to the broad debate of how much are we opening up India, not just in legal services, in all other industries. There's a policy around it, and that's the policy debate we are having today. But I just wanted to clarify, I'm not going into semantics, I'm not saying it's good or bad, I'm just saying as lawyers we need to decide what is that time, how much time do we take, as Mr. Pandey said.
1 month is the PCI.
Absolutely, sir.
So this
I
is
just want to just make one quick point for the youngsters over here. There are various websites that say they print legal news. There's one sitting over there. And the comments really paint, especially Mr. Bhasin, which is unfair as a dragon. Now let me tell you guys what it means to a foreign lawyer can come into India and practice law. Let's assume that happens. But his liability is limited. We today practice unlimited liability. Now I want to convert to a limited liability. The Bar Council has not agreed. Let's say they agree. If today my valuation, Mr. Devaya does a lot of these, what is it, 20x of top line? So if it's 20x, some NDA type firms will be 2,000 crores or 3,000 crores. Now 30% of 3,000 crores will have to be paid today. So 900 crores will be paid by Mr. Nishit Desai and his partners before they earn a rupee. Is that possible? So this is, this is completely impossible what is being suggested also. So they need to think through this, and Mr. Bhasin, I can tell you, I've known him for 30 years. Apart from being draconian as far as I'm concerned, he's not a dragon. Because he always regularly sends me mails and sends them to 50 other people. Thank you, Mr. Luthra, for agreeing to giving 5 lakhs for this purpose. And sign Mr. Bhasin. He does that all the time.
Thank you so much, Rajiv. We have a good 45 minutes for discussion, so we'll get back to the audience as well. I just want to ask Mr. Bhasin a very important issue which he's raised, which is the fact that the heart of opening up of the India's legal sector is actually not the law firms, not the government. It's all about the regulator, the Bar Council of India, and that's your observation. Now, if I were to push you on that front, you see, the Bar Council of India, as you know, is governed by the Advocates Act, created the regulatory framework for Bar Council to regulate legal education, legal profession. There are 1,400.
Legal education.
Yes, legal education, legal profession. There are 1,400 law schools in India today, and these are all regulated by the Bar Council. Now, let me just ask you a question.
Non-existent.
Yes, that's right. Now, the question that I really want to ask you is that if you and SILF and Indian law firms believe in the fact that this is inherently in the best interest of Indian economy and Indian legal services to actually open up, should we not also consider a possibility that these reforms can propel the internal reforms that we are hoping for? In a way, what I'm really asking you is that, should we be waiting for a time when the Indian regulatory bodies such as the Bar Council, which will actually open up? Because, frankly, the question that I really have, and Anu also I want to respond to, is that in the higher education context, it does not happen. We have 22 regulatory bodies in India which are regulating higher education. The opening up of India's higher education sector has been talked about for over a decade. Nothing has happened. And today we have the Prime Minister's office promoting the idea of 10 public and 10 private universities. Why? Because they want to bring those 20 universities outside India's own regulatory structure, because they realize that within the regulatory framework it is not possible to seek reforms. So I am seeing the same things emanating out of the legal sector. So is it possible for us to actually seek that reform through the Bar Council, or we need to look at alternative measures?
You see, the government of India took a very good initiative right from 2014, and now this is again gaining momentum as a result of the intervention of the Prime Minister's office. That is why a group has been set up under the Law Secretary to look into that. But for every step that we take, those may be baby steps and all that, we do require the cooperation, the coordination with the regulator, that the Bar Council of India. And at any given point of time, I have seen so many events happening wherever we say that so and so from the Bar Council of India will come and will speak on these issues. We have always seen that they never turn up, you see. And I can tell you that, you see, with some considerable weight at my command.
The only thing I would say is that the chairman of the Bar Council did mention that he is
Can I
coming, but unfortunately he's not
mention
there.
this in the larger context?
Please.
You have raised a very important point, and India as a country is actually struggling and has to look beyond. In 60s, largely around 60s, when by and large the profession, whether this is chartered accountancy or it is education, it is medical, dental, law, in all these professions, the profession became the regulator also. Now, if you see around the world, initially there was a similar kind of situation. But later on, the two functions have been separated. And these functions have been separated independently. Now, regulator in most of the developed countries now has become an independent body, which is at arm's length from the profession. Now, it may not happen overnight, but that is the only way to go forward. Because as long as the conflict of interest is not removed, a neutral, objective view cannot be taken by, because there would be different interest groups within the profession. They will rightly try to protect their own limited interest, but a regulator has to be independent, and therefore different models have come up globally. The 10-10 private and public institution. This is an experiment, and you correctly said that the education sector has not opened. But what it has led to? It has led to surrogacy in all professions. So which means, you take, we were discussing the issue, say accountancy, right? Now, consultancy, management consultancy is open in India, right? accountancy is not open. But all big four, they hire a local accountancy firm, even though they get the contract. The local firm does the work, and you have seen the Satyam classic case. The auditor went to jail because the liability was not that of the big consultancy firm, because somebody else was doing work on their behalf. So in commerce, we very strongly feel architecture. Now I am raising a larger issue here. Now you have Indian Council of Architecture, and again there is a provision there which provides for a natural person to be a member of the licensing and the registration with the ICI. But if you go around Gurgaon, if you go around Noida, you will see French architects designing this thing, American architects designing another thing, Singapore architects designing another thing. How it is happening?
Including our campus was designed by a French architect.
And it has happened. So what is happening, one of the points that had come right in the beginning, it's a very important point, and we have to see the only way, again globally, the best way to go forward is that the natural citizenship requirement has to go. But what has to come in place is a very objective examination, equivalence of education, which means that you qualify what exam I prescribe for, in addition to, like Indian doctors, they go to US, they qualify for that examination. Now Indian lawyers go to UK, they qualify 2 different examinations they have to take additionally, and they are qualified. Our feeling is, by opening in this way, you are not going to be flooded with people from outside. Actually, you will be finding it much more convenient to go out, because then MRAs, mutual recognition agreements, they become much simpler.
Thank you, Mr. Pandey. Now we open it up for further discussions. We have 40 minutes. I request you to introduce yourself and ask a brief question to either one of the panelists or direct it to the panel. We will collect 3 to 4 questions at a time. I request the panelists to note their questions as well, and we will then have time for them to respond. We can do this a few rounds. We will have time till 8 o'clock. So please, anybody from the panel. Yes, sure. Thank you so much.
I'll answer your question.
Good evening, sir. I am the LLM student of Jindal, OP Jindal.
Can you please keep your mic closer?
Yeah. I would like to ask about the question of professional indemnity insurance regarding if the client has been advised wrongly, how to go about that. Because even if the law firms come up and again to India, if we make a special rule for them, it will be difficult. So before that, we need to make something about the professional liability insurance. How to go about that?
Okay, all right. Any other question? Any comments, question? Please. Yeah, you have a question? Yes, sir? Yeah.
Good evening, sir. Even I am a LLM student. My question is with regards to the status of foreign lawyers coming up here. Since we have decided that there is an already existing category called advocates here, and we have given up the practice of distinction like pleaders, muktas, which was existing in the act before. So aren't we ready at this status quo to give them the room for Indian laws practice as well? Thank you very much for the time.
Good evening, sir. My name is Surya Rajkumar. I'm in the first year BA LLB. So I don't know much about law, but I've seen you speaking and it is really interesting. I would like to ask you, what is the simple advice you would give to young aspiring lawyers as partners in leading law firms? That's all. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. There's a lot of wisdom here. Please.
I want to know from the other lawyers as well. We heard about the need for a legal ombudsman. I want to hear, as in, are we not too late to talk about a legal ombudsman? That we should have been talking about that like way before, many years back. Yeah.
It does exist independently.
Independently, but a proper
Like
blanket kind of
like banking
legal
ombudsman.
Yeah,
Yeah.
something like that.
You said four.
Yeah. Last, we can't ignore Kian Gans from Legal India.
Hi, quick question, or possibly two questions. One of them is from a reader. What do you think liberalization is going to do for young lawyers? And we've kind of addressed that already, in that they might get access to better practices from abroad and these kind of things. But especially to sort of managing partners in the audience, what is the worst effect that this will have on the future generation of lawyers if it's done incorrectly, or if it goes well? I mean, what do they have to gain from this? And I think this might be interesting to students as well. And second question is for Mr. Pandey, actually. I think we've kind of tried to get at it already, but does the Advocates Act need to be amended, or is it possible to do it without any amendment of the Advocates Act?
Okay. Can we start with Mr. Basim? You may choose to answer.
Which question I should answer?
Maybe the one which
okay, on ombudsman.
Or no, but maybe the question which Kian asked, if we get it wrong, what's going to be the worst scenario, and if we get it right, what is the potential benefit for the next generation?
No, since a policy decision has been taken by all the major stakeholders that the legal services sector should be opened up, it's only a question of time when there will be a full opening of the legal. So our young students and then who become young lawyers, they would all stand to gain. I don't think there can be two opinions about it. All of us, even you see, with our interaction with our foreign counterparts, would definitely stand to gain. It will be a very healthy competition among the law firms, whether Indian law firm, foreign law firms, and that augurs very well for our young population of students and young lawyers. There will be more opportunities. Have I answered your question?
Let me tell for the youngster, then as part of Kian's answer too. See, most places in the world, particularly America and now more so UK, law is no more a profession, it's become a business. So you youngsters have to understand that, well, till recently, in most firms, even now in India, we are still a profession. So there is there's a human touch to it, there's a family touch to it. Once you enter this into a corporate sort of system, then you leave the office at 11 o'clock, you better be there at 5 to 9 the next morning. So you have to look at all of those things. And my own assessment is, we're not going to get 5,000 UK or American lawyers come and set up shop in India. I mean, we don't have to go very far, let's look at the rest of the world. Wherever the home country law firm was, wherever they've gone out, it's been 15, 20, 30, 50, 100 lawyers maximum outside home country. Other than Dentons or Bakers or DLA Piper, leave those three out, they have a different model. But look at all the other firms. So it's not that we are overly concerned that these guys will come and, yes, they will cherry pick, no doubt about that. Well, we might be happy with losing some of those good cherry pick people, because they won't know, we will know as family, where the good ones or the bad ones. So all in all, on balance, if it opens up, there will be competition. In some setups, this whole so-called slavery. Once I was asked this question by one of my young partners, a lady, and walks up to me and said, "Sir, I've become a slave." So I looked up at her and I said, "Beta, what is better, slave or employee?" "What do you mean?" You know how the girls get all rabid in 1 second. "What do you mean? How can a slave be better?" I said, "Listen, you must understand, an employee can be fired. A slave can only be sold. And if I can't find a new owner, I'm stuck with you. So just remember, probably better to be a slave." So.
Okay. Is there any other?
I would actually ask.
No, I was also going to answer his. Sorry.
See, there was a question.
It's in our draft rules. Haven't you seen it?
There was a question about the amendment in the Advocates Act. We have studied this with Mr. Basim, with the Department of Law. To be very honest with you, actually amendment is not required. Government has powers to make changes in the regulations. So even without legislative route, those changes are possible, and they can amend the rules. So no.
I would think so.
Can I, sorry, just both for Pratibha and Raj, there was the question about future generations and what they might look to do to be a successful lawyer. And since you both come from very different backgrounds and perspectives, I'd be interested in hearing what you have to say.
So I think I already addressed that. I think, increasingly we've seen technology play a very important role in all of our lives, and the legal profession is not going to be any different. You as a lawyer will need to understand what's happening. Globalization and technology has seen, the transformation of even legal services significantly. Today I don't need to advertise. Nishit Desai Associates is known because of its research, and that's possible because if you Google, you don't want to get into that. Sorry, these are Punjabi jokes. But we are known because of our research, and so if you Google, top 3 searches will come up on any research issue you take up, and our firm's name will come up. And so that just changes how you advertise. It's no more about putting ads in newspaper, right? So you've got to be at the cutting edge of understanding technology and law. It's not just about what laws you're reading in the books. And that's where I think globalization helps, and globalization of legal services help. And that's why we've gone out and set up for, we opened a Silicon Valley office before we opened a Delhi office, because we understood the importance of understanding what is happening in the valley, because that's where the new technologies are coming from. So whether we liberalize, we don't liberalize, you guys need to make sure you understand how the world is changing very quickly around you, and stay on top of it.
From my standpoint, and the way I see it, I think advice to be a good lawyer, let's examine what are the pillars that make a good lawyer. One certainly is integrity. Second is ethics. And third now is technology. Once you have these 3 clear, and notice none of it is money. Money is a byproduct. The problem with most of you youngsters today is that I interview a lot of, not a lot of you guys, I do a lot of you guys too, and you intern with us. Your focus is money. Your focus should be, what are you going to learn? The first, I've been to many campuses, and they discuss, so what do you pay? I said, why don't you ask me what I'm going to teach you? That's the important thing. So you should be hungry for learning. Money will flow, believe me. I've experienced it.
Just anecdotally, listen, I over a decade ago was picked up, worked with an American law firm, which had a perspective that we will get to a situation where we will be able to open an India office. So let's look at building capacity. And it was a great experience. It's an old, as just mentioning to Pratibha, old Los Angeles law firm, right? Not from the East Coast. It had its own thing, which was a very family concern. Right? I mean, the partner I was working with was keen to take me out for a cigar the moment he heard that I used to have an occasional cigarette, and because he wanted to go to a cigar. So to that, it benefited me immensely. Right? And I am grateful to that, because I've understood a lot more of not just the practice of the law and all of the other points that we mentioned, but the way in which you actually help a client. And from the perspective of what you asked the question, what do they gain? Well, I think the world is there to be gained, really, right? The only point is that, like with everything else in terms of liberalization, it has to be thought through, right? And that thinking through, I mean, in a manner of speech, it hasn't been done quite clearly over here properly. So there is advantage. There's absolutely no gainsaying that fact, right? I mean, there cannot be a denial of that. But and why should we deny it to the young, to the next generation of lawyers?
Mr. Jacob. So there is one piece of advice which I would like to give for those who would like to do in-house. No, in-house I think requires a little bit of a different skill set compared to a practicing lawyer, whether it is litigation or non-litigation. In-house expects, the spread of your knowledge is vast. Understand the business extremely well, because when we work with lawyers, we typically come across the situation where they don't understand maths, they can't read balance sheets. Wherever they can't understand, they say it's commercial, right? So that's a typical escape route for lawyers to say that it's commercial. So that's the fix people who go in-house have to have, where they have to understand the business extremely well. Rather than being a support to the business, they have to be a part of the business. If they are just support to the business, they get lost in the crowd. So that's for in-house.
Thank you so much. Pandit, I know you wanted to leave. I just want to ask one question to you which might resonate, and there are 3 more questions here. The thing which we have not discussed is that in some ways, is regulation going to be late for many things? There's an article in the Financial Times just a few weeks ago. It's a report from Deloitte on professional services, which is predicting that through artificial intelligence and robots coming into legal profession, we are looking at a loss of 120,000 legal sector jobs, high-end including. And I know that this is a matter of concern evolving. So in a way, what I'm really asking is that, is regulation always going to be late, as we have seen in many other sectors?
My feeling means from the kind of intense discussion that is happening in the government, the way things are moved, Mr. Bhasin has been very closely associated with all those developments. We have reached a threshold where I don't think the process can be stopped. The only challenge that we have today, that we should get it right. So we should get it right, that is the challenge, but I don't see this process getting stopped. And today's deliberation therefore is more, and when I requested you that how we should get it right, that is what we should be immediately seizing. We should be interacting at various levels in the decision making, because this is coming and it will not get delayed. This is what my sense is.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bhasin. And we'll have a few more questions as well.
Just on the question of
Yes.
Just on the question of whether amendment is required to the Advocates Act, Mr. Pandey is absolutely right. When we started our discussions way back in 2014, followed it up in 2015, and the interministerial group which was set up, till that time we felt that no amendment is required to the Advocates Act. But if you have a close look at the draft BCI rules, and if those rules have to be implemented, first you need to amend the Advocates Act. I don't have the time, but I have the material with me to point out that how these rules would be inconsistent with some of the provisions of the Advocates Act.
Thank you, sir. Rajiv, I wanted to respond to a few
There
questions.
were 2 questions that you've left out, Mr. Arnab Goswami. One was on professional indemnity. I think you asked that question. So on professional indemnity, how it works is, till about 15 odd years or 18 odd years ago, nothing that existed in India. There was no insurance company that would allow you to buy or sell professional indemnity. I think our firm took professional indemnity insurance about 13 years ago for the first time. Now we are covered for everything, but we have to pay a very fat premium. But we're not covered for negligence. So now you know that word, and which way it can be proved and how it can go. You're an LLM student, I can see that. So that's the issue. Everywhere else in the world, or most developed countries, firstly in England, it is compulsory to buy professional indemnity insurance. So if you want to start to go there, what Sir was talking about, barriers of trade. If you come and practice in India, you don't need anything. If I go to England, I have to pay £20,000 a year. Apart from all this, almost £1 lakh rupees as visa fees. So if you look at all of that and setting up, of course, purchasing power parity, etc., we can go into various economic discussions And Divaya, I have to tell you, I can read a balance sheet and do some economics.
About the students.
I'm kidding. So that's a fact. That was one. The second was the question on ombudsman. See, today the Bar Council is the regulator. The Bar Council is like Reserve Bank of India. Can a bank decide on certain policies on their own and try and fix without taking the Reserve Bank into account? Unfortunately, and Kian, if you quote me, I'll kill you. This is off record. Our Bar Council is almost defunct. We have no real, nobody is regulating.
Of course he's going to
We will,
quote you.
Kian will quote me. Okay, we have a deal. Put Mr. Basi, so says Mr. Lalit Basi. So we have an ombudsman. If you have a problem with the services a lawyer provides, you can go and complain to the Bar Council. And technically, you should have a hearing and a solution of either cancelling the guy's license. But I think in the history of the Bar Council, it's probably happened 7 times. So, and I look at the Bar Council across India, they're about, and some statistics were, why don't you do an RTI application? They're under RTI now. And say how many complaints have been filed and how many have been done and what are the...
They don't respond then.
It is not fair
To RTI.
No, not really.
The Bar Council of India is not represented in this forum.
Why
so
not? They re-elected them.
No, but they are not here, so I would not like to go into that discussion now without the BCI present here. Can I call upon Mr. R. Venkatramani, the Senior Advocate, Supreme Court of India, former member of the Law Commission of India? He has a question, and there's another question in the audience, and there's one more. So we will be on schedule. It's 7:40. We will wind up at 8 o'clock as we have promised, and follow with dinner. So I request all of you to bear with us.
Raj, there's no question. I mean, it's an intellectually stimulating engagement in the evening. I don't belong to any firms. I've not got into that culture. At my early practice in the Supreme Court. But from a distance, I've been watching slowly the development with great amount of interest and concern. With regard to the Law Commission, on some occasion we had this to consider this issue. But fortunately or unfortunately, for some of us who want to take the lead, the Law Commission was too reluctant to get into this question. I came to understand that the Bar Council of India had probably put a lot of pressure that the Law Commission would not get into the question. It was a very sad thing to happen to the Law Commission. But what I want to say is, we have got connected a whole lot of dots today. From legal education onwards, the quality of legal education, to reciprocity, and the level playing field. I think they all occupy a kind of a connecting link. You snap one, I think there is the whole thing snapped somewhere. You're not talking about a static model. You're talking about dynamic model to evolve. So I think, personally speaking, I wish to banish Bar Council of India from its regulatory role as far as legal education is concerned. And once that is done, I think the next step will automatically follow. I don't mind that the Bar Council chairman is not here. We are talking about a policy, the institution, involvement of the community of lawyers and legal education. And where are we going? I think the sooner the better. Bar Council of India, by a very big amendment in the Advocates Act, if it is taken out of the whole purview of legal education, the next important step will take place. The next question is, I think we need to look at the amendment to the Advocates Act from all these angles. Not really whether to permit outside lawyers, law firms, or legal practice to come in or not. I think unless we look into the Advocates Act fundamentally from what it has failed to do for legal education, and after post-1990, what it's failed to do for opening up legal sector, not only in terms of corporate sector. Look at what is happening to our tribal areas. Look at what's happening in the whole red corridor. Where is justice delivery system there? What is the Advocates Act have done there? What is legal education done as far as those areas are concerned? I don't think it's close to our eyes to those very important concerns of our country. I think they're able to connect these concerns, probably would have taken the next step forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll have another comment there, right? Please.
I want to say, sir, you'll be getting an email shortly from Mr. Vaseem and thanking you for agreeing to join the committee.
Yes, I'm Bitika Anand, and I think this is also further to what Mr. Luthra was saying. I think we are talking a lot about these foreign law firms coming and all that. I've met many of them in the past 1 year in US and UK. foreign law firms are very particular about their profitability and per partner profits that they make. So, and the kind of fee structures they have. So we may be here imagining, I don't know, when the opening is going to happen, there will be a rush of foreign law firms. Like he said, it's not going to happen. Because many law firms told me very clearly, Bitika, if I am going to get more in Japan, in Korea, why should I go to India? So these people, and they like to maintain their profits per partners. So it works like in a very different way the way it works in India. You know, so that is one. So that is a very important thing we should keep in mind in the whole perspective of getting to wondering, what's going to happen to us if there's a rush of law firms. Nothing like this is going to happen, like he said, unless they come under the Swiss Varan route, which is Dentons and Baker McKenzie's and all, because they have a very and they take a local player and they open their firms. So I think this particular aspect is very important to look at it. We shouldn't get like two kind of, one is of course we should work on those things, but this is a very important aspect.
Thank you. There's another question. Yeah, please. Or a comment.
Well, good evening. I'm Sahib Singh Sidhu, BLLB first year. I was listening to the speakers, the distinguished speakers, and I made out that we've been talking about the law firms competing with each other, the ones from India with the ones from the foreign countries. But what do you think would be the impact of the opening of India's legal services sector on the advocates who practice law individually outside a firm?
Thank you for that question. Please, yeah.
The Bar Council is involved at the moment with the verification of the lawyers.
Can you please introduce yourself?
I'm Rahul Chitnis. I practice law in the Supreme Court. I used to be secretary of the Bombay Bar when I was in Bombay, so I interacted a lot with the bar associations as well as the Bar Council of Maharashtra. At the moment, the Bar Council is involved with the verification rules. As you know, everybody has to verify that they are a lawyer. So in that sense, the Bar Council does not know how many members it has to start with. Yeah, and that's taking a long time. Then there come the elections. So what is this, I want to question to Mr. Bhasin, what is the steps that the society is taking to push, in that sense, the Bar Council to take steps to take reform? Because the Bar Council should be totally in a mess, to put it politely.
No, you're asking a very awkward question. We can't be pushing the Bar Council of India. It is the Bar Council of India which will push us out, you see. They say, what is your locus standi? You are not even registered with us. It is only the individual lawyers who are registered with us. And we have taken up this issue with the Bar Council of India, which has been pending for the last 5-6 years, that you have some mode and manner, you see, of registration of law firms. But now they are coming up, you see, with a proposal that foreign law firms, they need to be registered, they will be entitled to be registered, but Indian law firm will not be entitled. So we can't push them anyway. It is only the government and Mr. Pandey who can push them to some extent.
But listen, we cannot forget the fact that the Bar Council of India was at the vanguard of legal education reforms, establishing the National Law School of India, University of Bangalore, and since then the 20 other law schools. So it's yeah, I know. So the point is, it's very